አሁን ቀጥታ የምሄደው ወደ ሁለተኛው ፕሬዘንተራችን ነው ዶክተር ወንጌል ሞር ወደ ሄልዝ ኮንሰንትሬት አድርጋ የምትነግረን የምታቀብለን ነገር ይኖራል ወደ ወንጌል ዶክተር ወንጌል ሜዳል
እሺ አመሰግናለሁ ከእንደዚህ ያለ በጣም ደስ የሚል ጨዋታ በኋላ ማውራት በእውነቱ በጣም ደስ ይላል ማለት መታደል ነው ስሜ ዶክተር ወንጌል ጸጋዬ ይባላል የካንሰር ህክምና ስፔሻሊስት እና በቅዱስ ጳውሎስ ሆስፒታል የካንሰር ህክምና የትምህርት ክፍል አሲስታንት ፕሮፌሰር ነኝ እንግዲህ ሚዲያ ኦፍ ኮሚኒኬሽኑ እንግሊዘኛ የሚሆን መስሎኝ ነበርና ስላይዶቼን በዛ መሰረት ነው ያዘጋጀሁት As you can see, today we're going to have a talk on everyday chemicals, the cancer risks, and Ethiopia's safer living. Okay, so I'm very privileged to be here on this prestigious platform and having to speak on such sensitive and timely topic. So, we as medical doctors, you as chemical engineers, manage the chemical aspect of things and we manage the biological consequences. So I believe it's platforms like this that help to bridge the gap between the two. Okay, so nearly a quarter of diseases globally are rooted in our environment, okay? As you might already know, the cancer burden is rising both globally and locally, and environmental carcinogens have a greater role in this. And unfortunately, low and middle income countries face disproportionate risks in terms of suffering from the consequences of this. It could be due to weak regulations and poor infrastructure to dispose wastes and most importantly lack of awareness of the public. Okay. So globally, Globocon is a global cancer data and shows us that there are approximately 20 million new cancer cases diagnosed every year. And unfortunately, 70% of the diseases occur in the LMICs, and environmental exposure and occupational exposure are assumed to be the most incriminated ones. So Ethiopia as a low and middle income country is now faced by the double epidemiologic burden. Previously we had to deal with communicable and infectious diseases. Now, the burden of the NCDs and diseases like cancer is on the rise as well. So, as in any other sector or field, there is a major limitation in terms of documentation. We don't have a national cancer registry, but we do have Addis Ababa-based cancer registry, and according to that, we see nearly 70,000 new cancer cases every year in Ethiopia. And the most common ones, the top 5 cancers are the breast, cervical, colon, prostate, and an emerging cancer is liver cancer. And it's not just the numbers that is the tragedy, but the timing of presentation is also very sad in our case, where almost 70% of our cases present late. So when we talk about environmental and occupational hazards or exposures, almost always there is the issue of carcinogens, okay? So carcinogens are any agents, they could be biological or chemical, with the potential of disrupting DNAs, mutating DNAs, and eventually causing cancers. So according to their carcinogenic potential, the IARC, the International Agency on Research on Cancer, has come up with 3 classifications. The class 1, the proven carcinogens with proven effects on human beings. The probable carcinogens, the group 2As, with limited carcinogenic potential on human beings, but sufficient carcinogenic potential on experimental animals. And the possible carcinogen group, which is the 2B, with not so much carcinogenic potential on both humans and animals, but there seems to be a bit of sufficient evidence seen on experimental animals. So some some agents belonging to the group 1 carcinogens are tobacco, benzyl, aflatoxins, okay, coal, and infectious agents like hepatitis B virus, HPV, and the like. So, as you all know, we are faced with potential carcinogens in, okay, someone? So we face potential carcinogens in our day-to-day activity, okay? So we're going to start from our skin, which is the biggest organ, okay? So regarding cosmetics and personal care, from the tiny makeup that I'm wearing today, to the shampoos and the soaps we use every day, there are potential PFAs and endocrine disrupting chemicals, okay? These PFAs are chemicals, a group of organofluorines, which have a very high carbon fluoride bonds. They are called forever chemicals because they are not easily degradable by heat, by water, or chemical reactions, and they are easily transportable through oil, soil, and other media, which makes them persistent organic pollutants, and their potential to be global pollutants are there. So they are found in the cosmetics we use every day, the soaps we use every day, from mascaras to foundations, ሴቶች more relate ያደርጋሉ እዚህ room ውስጥ ያሉ, and the safety of the lotions, the shampoos we use is also under question, okay? So when I was እኔ እነዚህን ነገሮች ማየት ስጀምር ነው ቤት ያሉ ሌቭሎችን ዞር እያደረግኩ ማየት የጀመርኩት ይሄ ሰብስታንስ አለ ይሄ ኬሚካል አለ የምንጠቀመው ውስጥ እያልኩኝና that muchም consumer literacy የለም. We don't have the literacy of reading labels. እንኳን specific chemicals ይቀርና expiry date ራሱ የሚያይ ሰው በጣም ጥቂት ነው, I believe. So another striking chemical that we find in our day-to-day cosmetic and hygiene products is formaldehyde, which is I want you to take note, labeled as a group 1 carcinogen according to the IARC. And this molecule is used to prevent microbial growth, and it's found in almost all the things that we use on a day-to-day basis, including furniture, cosmetics and hygiene products, kids' toys, and it's quite striking. And whether or not the levels of this compound is regulated in our setup, I don't know, and it's quite frightening to find out, to be honest. So moving on to from the skin to the gut, food and packaging is also another area of concern with regards to exposure to potential carcinogens. So our staple foods like maize and berbere and our ground nuts are assumed to have striking levels of aflatoxins. So I think ብዙዎቻችሁ እንደምታውቁት locally produced የሚሆኑ ቆሎች ለኤክስፖርት አይውሉም ምክንያቱም internationally approved የሆኑ safety ሌቭሎችን exceed ስለሚያደርጉ ኤክስፖርት አይደረግም እንግዲህ አሁን ቅርብ ጊዜ ያለ ኢንፎርሜሽን የለኝም. So these aflatoxins, as you all know, are byproducts of certain strains of fungi. Okay, this fungi can colonize the crop. It could be pre-harvest or post-harvest. Pre-harvest, especially in drought-stricken crops, and post-harvest during the storage times. And it usually thrives during warm and humid temperatures. And aflatoxin is the metabolic byproduct of this fungi. Okay, so once ingested, okay, this toxin causes inflammation of the hepatocytes, which is the cell of the liver. It causes inflammation, scarring or cirrhosis, and eventually causes cancer. So it's highly linked to hepatocellular carcinoma, which is a very fatal cancer, and not much resources are available in terms of treating it, and it's usually diagnosed late. So how is this relevant ብትሉኝ በጣም ብዙም አመት አልሆነኝም. It's been almost 5 years since I started practicing oncology. ግን literature ላይ report ከሚደረገው በላይ other known risk factors ሳይኖራቸው non alcoholic የሆኑ hepatitis B ሳይኖራቸው and ሌሎች genetic causes potentially incriminate የሚደረጉ ሳይኖራቸው በጣም we are seeing more and more cases of referrals of hepatocellular cancer, particularly from eastern side of Ethiopia and northeastern part of Ethiopia, like Desse, Kombolcha, Haramaya, Dredo አካባቢ በጣም ብዙ cases of HCC እያየን ነውና of course more epidemiological studies, case control studies with randomization is important to establish the causality, but this is worth noting. Okay. So our evolving lifestyle poses new health concerns. Okay, as you are all aware, there is a rise in the fast food industry of our country, and with this comes the question of PFAS, forever chemicals ያልናቸው ማለት ነው. They are found in grease resistant wraps, okay, and non-stick cookwares and lots of other things that we're not aware of. So what's the significance of this PFAS ብለን ብንል they bioaccumulate and they biomagnify, okay? So they're usually fat soluble ናቸው ማለት they get into our fats and they're not degradable. So throughout one's lifetime, a single individual can accumulate thousands and thousands of this micromolecule, okay, which would eventually lead to, a disease, of course. So another thing, how we cook our food is also of paramount importance. Okay, so frying starchy foods and cooking, heating cooking oil above a certain temperature, particularly above 200 degrees Celsius, has found to be associated with the release of chemicals like acrylamides. Okay, so these acrylamides undergo series of chemical reactions and they produce free radicals and the oils change into trans fats, and this is a recipe for cardiovascular disorders like dyslipidemia, heart disease, and free radicals are of course mutagens, and the accumulation of these free radicals and mutation of the DNA eventually will lead to carcinogenesis. እንዲህ ጥብስ ያለ ርር ያለ ስጋ ወይም ግሪልድ ቢት የሚወድ ሰው ካለ እንግዲህ ዛሬ ቆም ብሎ ማጤን ይኖርበታል። ምክንያቱም especially when direct heat is applied, okay, ይሄ direct flame apply የሚደረግ ይሄ grilled meat ማለት ነው አይደለ? እሱ እንዲህ ከሰል ላይ የሚጠበሱ አይነት ስጋዎች ሲሆኑ there would be a series of chemical reactions with the creatine in the intense heat along with the creatine will form heterocyclic amines የሚባሉ, okay, and these are potential mutagens according to literature. So moving on to household air pollution, the inhalation route, perhaps the most pervasive of everyday chemical exposures in the Ethiopian context is the air we inhale every day in our home. Okay, so this use of biomass fuels and dung for cooking has been found to be the primary source of fuel for more than 85% of Ethiopian households. Okay, and this will lead to the production of a mixture of polycyclic aromatase hydrocarbons. Okay, and these are found to cause inflammation, DNA damage, and cell death. Okay, so we're seeing nowadays striking trends regarding lung cancer in our clinics. Okay, so like I said, studies are necessary, but according to our observation, አንደኛ ሂስቶሎጂው ተቀይሯል። ኦኬ previously የምናያቸው የላንግ ካንሰሮች ከስሞኪንግ ጋር አሶሺየትድ የሆኑ ናቸው directly, small cell lung cancer, squamous cell የምንላቸው ናቸው. But nowadays there is a trend towards adenocarcinoma. And we see them in women with no smoking history whatsoever. Even in the men, the lung cancers we diagnose nowadays have no association with smoking. But the fact that we see them in women, it's probably because of their proximity and frequent exposure of cooking fire. So this is a hypothesis which needs to be further tested. So I'm glad doctor mentioned DDT, when organochlorine pesticides. They're used for pesticides and vector control. And like he rightfully put, they were banned from the Western market in the 1967. There's actually a very interesting undertaking that took place before the banning of the OCPs. So the bald eagle extinction. Bald eagles የሚባሉ የአሞራ ዝርያዎች ነበሩና so what happened is there was a wide range of OCP, organochlorine pesticide use in that area, and the fish ingest the algae that is contaminated with the DDT, and this fish are ingested by the eagles eventually. Okay, so the OCP caused thinning of the eggshells. Okay, so prematurely የእንቁላል ቅርፊቶቹ በጣም ይሳሱና prematurely crack ያደርጋሉ. So it interferes with the reproductive potential of the eagles, and it was near extinction then. እና እንግዲህ environmental experts አጥንተው ደረሱበትና ባን ተደረገ. So you can only imagine what this would do to humans and to human fetuses, depending on the timing and the dose of exposure to this chemicals. Okay. So this has been found to be associated with hematological malignancies, fertilities, and in a study done on rodents, it has been found to interrupt with the development of mammary glands, the amount of milk production, and the like. And apart from that, it causes multiple hormone disruptions within the body. So this is one concept that I'm sure you're all aware, but an strike again concept ስለሆነ ነው. So bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So there is a toxin like DDT, okay, and there is an algae or an aquatic life that is contaminated by it, and one fish eat that toxin, okay, ingest that toxin, and that fish could be exposed to that toxin at several intervals throughout its lifetime, and because they are fat soluble, they bioaccumulate within a single organism. Okay, bioaccumulation is the accumulation of toxin within a single organism faster than it can excrete it, okay, because it's fat soluble, and there's that. But biomagnification is the increase in concentration of the toxin, not just the concentration, but the magnification of the effects of the toxin as it moves up the food chain. ምክንያቱም አሁን እዚህ ጋር አሳዎቹ ውስጥ ያለው ቶክሲን አለ, okay, and eagle ደግሞ which is the top predator, humanም ሊሆን ይችላል እነዚህ አሳዎችን የሚበላው by the way. So ከነዚህ አሳዎች ሁሉ ውስጥ ያለውን ቶክሲን አገኘ ማለት ነው አይደለ? So there is the concept of accumulation and also the magnification of the toxin and its effects. So this is a very important concept because we as human seems to be the top predators in most of the food chain that we have. Yeah. So local data is quite hard to find, to be honest, but I've tried to look into a few studies done. So there was a case study done in the Rift Valley area linking the use of pesticide use along with newly emerging cases of increasing lymphoma cases. And it was conducted in the hotspot areas of the Zuwai, the Meki, and the Arsi Negale area where vast agriculture practices are conducted along with pesticide use. And the pesticide under study was the OCPs, the organochlorine pesticides, and there had been The findings showed that there was significant association between agricultural pesticide exposure and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. In case you guys are wondering what non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is, it's a type of hematologic malignancy that arise from lymphocytes, which are types of white cell counts important for immunity. Okay. So this is one striking finding. There was a 2.1 times odds of developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and pesticide use as opposed to their controls. So the increasing incidence and prevalence of hepatocellular toxins is like we discussed earlier, especially from the eastern part of Ethiopia and the north, central, and northern part of Ethiopia, which is an area that should be open for more research. So the thing about aflatoxins is that once it's coupled with, it has a synergetic effect in a person who also has hepatitis infection, okay? So it's not just 2-3 times increase the risk of acquiring HCC, is not just it's 30 to 60 fold increased in patients who also have hepatitis, which is also a very common infectious etiology in Ethiopian context, okay? So I'm sure ከናንተ መካከል ብዙ ውሃ ላይ የሰራ ውሃ ሴፍቲ ላይ የሰራ ሰው ይኖራል more information ከናንተ እናገኛለን but water is a source of life but studies show that it can also be a source of cancer. Okay, so a study conducted in Adami Tullu, which took 45 groundwaters under study, showed that the arsenic concentrations were far exceeded the WHO safety limits, and this was. It concluded that the lifetime cancer and non-cancerous risk is going to be unacceptably high because of this. There was also a similar study examining the lead level in water. I'm not sure where it was conducted, but it showed that lead content in the municipal water and the groundwater was also exceeding acceptable levels. Not that there is an acceptable level for lead, not that I've read of. Okay, so another study, a multi-center study conducted in Tqurambesa Hospital, Jumma and Haramaya, which enrolled 351 lung cancer patients, like I tried to mention earlier, showed that 75% of the cases of lung cancer occurred in non-smokers, in women. Okay. And this shows that we could have hypothesized that this could be due to indoor air pollution exposure. So another interesting study done regarding emerging organic pollutants in Ethiopia, in the Awash Basin and the Lake Hawassa area, showed that PFAS, or forever chemicals that we mentioned earlier, were found in significant amount both in the surface water and in the sediments of the river in this area. And the clinical relevance is that there would be accumulation, bioaccumulation, and these chemicals have been linked to the development of kidney cancer and the testicular cancers. Okay. So I found this term very interesting, okay? Following pharmaceutical residues, they use the term medicated river because, in fact, high levels of antibiotics like ciprofloxacin, sulfamethoxazole was found in these hospitals, and the potential sources being the hospital wastes, urban sewage, and the like. And the clinical significance is that this would serve as potential endocrine disruption, which is really a national crisis for such a financially compromised country like ours. So endocrine disrupting chemicals እያልኩኝ በጣም ብዙ ጊዜ ስደጋግም ነበርና so the endocrine system uses hormones ወይም ቅመሞች to signal actions within our bodies, okay? So we need them in limited amounts, okay? There are times that we need the hormones to be higher, and there are times that we need them to be shut off. But what these endocrine disrupting chemicals do is that they mimic the hormones in our bodies, and they could either mimic them or they could block their actions undesirably, okay? So the danger of this endocrine disrupting chemicals is not their mere carcinogenic potential, but that the fact that the traditional thinking, the dose is the poison የሚለው እዚህ ጋር አይሰራም, because they could potentially be toxic even at lower doses when exposure is over a long period of time. Okay, so እኛ የምናውቀው በጣም ብዙ ዶዝ በጣም ብዙ poison በጣም ብዙ effect ነው አይደለ? But these chemicals are more harmful at lower doses exposed over a longer period of time. Okay, and we're seeing a rise in hormone sensitive cancers. Okay, and I think in the past 3-4 months alone I diagnosed, I think, a 19-year-old and a 23-year-old with hormone positive breast cancers. Okay, so breast cancer is possible. It can happen in younger age groups, but when it does, we usually find it to be linked to inherited genetic conditions or inherited genetic mutations, and this associated cancers, the cancers associated with the genetic mutations, are usually not hormone positive ወይም triple negative የምንለው የካንሰር አይነት ነው in the younger age groups የሚፈጠረውና they are usually linked to defects in inherited defects of genes and DNAs. but እነዚህ አሁን የመጣው ትሬንድ ግን hormone positive የሆኑ ካንሰሮች in younger age groups እየተፈጠሩ ነው. And this shows us that maybe this age group is being exposed to potential endocrine disrupting chemicals at a younger age, causing them maybe to develop this cancer. Again, this is an area, this is a hypothesis worth researching in the future. So, ምን እንደሆነ እናውቃለን እሱ ሲነሳ። So what's the interesting concept from chemical engineer standpoint? It's this non-monotonic dose response defies the traditional safety testing methods, because we taste dose and we taste a specific chemical at a time. Okay, so this chemical shows us effect is not a linear function of dose. ሌላው ነገር ምንድነው usually standard safety testoች ቴስት የሚያደርጉት ቅድም እንዳልኩት አንድ ኬሚካል ነው, but the effect could be due to a cocktail of chemicals causing that effect. So we need to come up with more advanced ways of testing these effects, not just a single chemical. So another important thing regarding these chemicals is their potential for epigenetic programming. It's not just the person who's immediately exposed that's at risk, but these chemicals, okay, once they bind to the DNA, dictate which genes are magnified and which genes are silenced, posing their transgenerational threat. Okay, so I will leave the way forward and recommendations because I believe there are more expertise here that who would tell us more on better regulations and better control mechanisms. So I thank you for your ears. Thank you very much.